Hello, we are continuing with Jeeves and the Feudal Spirit by P G Wodehouse. Now we're up to chapter 18. It is at moments like this that you catch Bertram Wooster at his superb best, his ice-cold brain working like a machine. Many fellows, I mean to say, seeing that safe door open, would have wasted precious time, standing goggling at it, wondering why it was open, who had opened it, and why whoever had opened it hadn't shut it again. But not Bertram. Hand him something on a plate with watercress round it, and he does not loiter and linger. He acts. A quick dip inside, and a rapid rummaging, and I had the thing all sewed up. There were half a dozen jewel cases stowed away on the shelves, and it took a minute or two to open them and examine contents, but investigation revealed only one pearl necklace, so I was spared anything in the nature of a perplexing choice. Swiftly trouser-pocketing the bijouterie, I shot off to Aunt Dahlia's den like a jackrabbit I had so closely resembled at my recent conference with Stilton. She should, I thought, be there by now, and it was a source of considerable satisfaction to me to feel that I was about to bring sunshine back into the life of this deserving old geezer. When last seen, she had so plainly been in need of a bit of sunshine. I found her in status quo, as foreseen, smoking a gasper and spelling away through her Agatha Christie. But I didn't bring the sunshine into her life, because it was already there. I was amazed at the change in her demeanour since she'd gone off, droopingly to see if Uncle Tom had finished talking to Spode about old silver. Then, you will recall, her air had been that of one caught in the machinery. Now she conveyed the impression of having found the blue bird. As she looked up on discovering me in her mists, her face was shining like the seat of a bus driver's trousers, and it wouldn't have surprised me much if she had started yodeling. Her whole aspect was that of an aunt who on honeydew has fed and drunk the milk of paradise, and the thought crossed my mind that if she was feeling as yeasty as this before hearing the good news, she might quite easily, when I spilled the same, explode with a loud report. I was not able, however, to reveal the chunk of secret history which I had up my sleeve, for, as so often happens when I am closeted with this woman, she made it impossible for me to get a syllable in edgeways. Even as I crossed the threshold, words began to flutter from her like bats out of a barn. "Bertie!" she boomed. "Just the boy I wanted to see! Bertie, my pet! I have fought the good fight. Do you remember the hymn about see the troops of Midian prowl and prowl abound? It goes on, Christian, up and smite 'em, and that is what I have done in spades. Let me tell you what happened. It will make your eyes pop." "I say," I said, but was able to get no further. She rolled over me like a steamroller. "When we parted in the hall not long ago, you will remember I was bewitched, bothered, and bewildered because I couldn't get hold of Spode to put the bite on him about Eulalie Sirs, and was going to the collection room on the off chance of there having been a lull. But he continued to take it without a murmur, and Tom went rambling on, and then suddenly my bones were turned to water, and the collection room swam before my eyes without any warning. Tom suddenly switched to the subject of the necklace. 'You might like to look at it now,' he said. 'Certainly,' said Spode, and off they went." She paused for breath, as even she has to do sometimes. "I say," I said. The lungs refilled. She carried on again. "I wouldn't have thought my limbs would have been able to support me to the door, much less down a long passage into the hall, but they did. I followed in the wake of the procession, giving at the knees, but somehow managing to navigate. What I thought I was doing, joining the party, I don't know, but I suppose I had some vague idea of being present when Tom got the bad news and pleading brokenly for forgiveness. Anyway, I went. Tom opened the safe, and I stood there as if I had been turned into a pillar of salt, like Lot's wife." I recalled the incident to which she referred, it having happened to come up in the examination paper that time I won the prize for scripture knowledge at my private school, but it's probably new to you, so I will give you a brief synopsis. For some reason which has escaped my memory, they told this Mrs. Lot while out walking one day not to look wound or she would be turned into a pillow of salt. So of course she immediately did look wound, and by what I've always thought to be an odd coincidence, she was turned into a pillow of salt. It just shows you what? I mean to say, you never know where you are these days. Time marches on. Tom took out the jewel case and passed it over to Spode, who said, "Oh, is this it, is it?" Or some damn silly remark like that. And that moment, with a hand of doom within a tutter of descending, Seppings appeared, probably sent by my guardian angel, and told Tom he was wanting on the phone. "Hey, what?" said Tom. "He's in variable practice when he is wanted on the phone," and legged it, followed by Seppings. "Woof," she said, and paused for breath again. I say," I said. You can imagine how I felt that stupendous bit of luck had changed the whole aspect of affairs. For hours I had been wondering how on earth I could get Spode alone, and now I had got him alone. You can bet I didn't waste a second. "Just think, Lord Sidcup," I said willingly, "I haven't had a moment to talk to you about all your mutual friends and those happy days at Topley Towers. How is dear Sir Watkin Bassett?" I asked, still willingly. I fairly cooed to the man. "I say," I said. She squelched me with an imperious gesture. "Don't interrupt, curse you! I never saw such a chap for wanting to collar the conversation. Gabble, gabble, gabble. Listen, can't you, and I'm telling you the biggest story that has broken around these parts for years. Where was I? Oh, yes. How is dear Sir Watkin?" I said, and he said, "Sir Watkin was pretty ujar, come spliff." "And dear Madeline," I said, and he said Madeline was ticking over all right, and then I drew a deep breath and let him have it. "And how is that ladies' underclothing place of yours getting along?" I said. "Eulalie Sewers, isn't it called? Still coining money, I trust." And next moment you could have knocked me down with a feather, for with a jolly laugh he replied, "Eulalie Sewers, oh, I haven't had anything to do with that any longer. I sold out ages ago. It's a company now." And as I stood gaping at him, my old plan of campaign in ruins, he said, "Well, I may as well have a look at that necklace. Mr. Travers says he's anxious to have my opinion of it." And he pressed his thumb to the catch and the jewel case flew open. And as I was just commending my soul to God and saying to myself that this was the end, when I stubbed my foot against something and looked down, and there, lying on the floor, you'll scarcely believe this, was a cosh. She paused again, took on a cargo of breath quickly, and resumed. "Yes, sir, a cosh. You wouldn't know what a cosh is, of course. I'll explain. It's a small rubber instrument much used by the criminal classes for socking their friends and relations. They wait till their mother-in-law's back is turned and then let her have it on the tortoiseshell comb. It's all the rage in underworld circles, and there it was, as I say, lying at my feet." "I say," I said. I got the imperious gesture between the eyes once more. "Well, for a moment it rang no bells. I picked it up automatically, the good housewife who doesn't like to see things lying around on floors. But it held no message from me. It simply didn't occur to me that my guardian angel had been directing my footsteps and was showing me the way out of my troubles and perplexities. And then, suddenly, in a blinding flash, I got it. I realised what the good guardian old angel was driving at. He had at last succeeded in penetrating the bone and getting it into my fat head. There was Spode, with his back turned, starting to take the necklace out of the case. I gasped, gurglingly. "You didn't cosh him?" "Certainly I coshed him. What would you have me do? What would Napoleon have done? I took a nice easy half swing and let go with lots of follow through, and he fell to earth he knew not where." I could readily believe it. Just so had Constable Dobbs fallen at Deverwell Hall. "He's in bed now, convinced that he had a touch of vertigo and hit his head on the floor. Don't worry about Spode, a good night's rest and a bland diet, and he'll be as right as rain tomorrow. And I've got the necklace. I've got the necklace, ballet necklace, and I feel as if I could pick up a couple of tigers and knock their heads together." I gaped at her. The bean was swimming through the mist that had arisen before the eyes. She appeared to be swaying like an ant caught in a high wind. You say you've got the necklace? I quavered. I certainly have. Then what, I said in about as hollow a voice as ever proceeded from human lips, is this one I've got? And I produce my exhibit. For quite a while it was plain that she had failed to follow the story sequence. She looked at the necklace, then at me, then at the necklace again. It was not until I had explained fully that she got the strength of it. Of course, yes, she said, her brow clearing. I see it all now, what with yelling for Tom and telling him Spode had had some sort of seizure and listening to say, oh my God, no, we'll have to put the frightful fellow up for the night, and trying to comfort him and helping Seppings tote the remains to bed and all that. I forgot to suggest shutting the safe door. And Tom, of course, never thought of it. He was much too busy tearing his hair and saying this was certainly the last time he would invite a club acquaintance to his house. By golly, it being notorious for the first thing club acquaintances do on finding themselves in somebody's home is to have fits and then take advantage of them to stay dug into the woodwork for weeks. And then you came along and rummaged in the safe and found a pearl necklace and naturally thought it was yours. And swiped it. Very decent of you, Bertie dear, and I appreciate the kind thought. If you had been here this morning, I would have told you that Tom insisted on everybody putting their valuables in the safe. But you had dashed up to London. What took you there, by the way? I went to get the cosh, formerly the property of Aunt Agatha's son Thos. I have been having trouble of late with menaces. She gazed at me with worshipping eyes, deeply moved. Was it you, my heart of gold? She said brokenly. Who provided that cosh? I had been putting it down as straight guardian angel stuff. Oh, Bertie, if ever I called you a brainless poop who ought to be given a scholarship at some good lunatic asylum, I take back the words. I thanked her briefly. But what happens now? I give 3 rousing cheers and start strewing roses from my hat. I frowned with a touch of impatience. I am not talking about you, my dear old ancestor, but about your nephew Bertram. The latter being waist-high in the mulligatawny and liable at any moment to sink without trace. Here I am in possession of somebody's pearl necklace. Ma Trotters! I recognise it now. She wears it in the evenings. Right, so far so good. The choker belongs, we find, to Ma Trotter. That point established, what do I do for the rest? You put it back! In the safe? That's it! You put it back in the safe. It struck me as a most admirable idea, and I wondered why I hadn't thought of it myself. You've hit it, I said. Yes, I'll put it back in the safe. I'd run along now if I were you. No time like the present. I will. Oh, by the way, Daphne Dolores Moorhead has arrived. She's out in the grounds with Stilton. What did you think of her? A sight for sore eyes. If I may use the expression, I had no idea they were making female novelists like that these days. I would have gone on to amplify the favourable impression the young visitor's outer crust had made on me, but at this moment Mrs. Twatter loomed up in the doorway. She looked at me as if feeling that I was, on the whole, pretty superfluous. Oh, good evening, Mr. Wooster, she said in a distant sort of way. I was hoping to find you alone, Mrs. Travers, she added, with the easy tact which had made her the toast of Liverpool. I'm just off, I assured her. Nice evening. Very nice. Well, toodaloo, I said, and I set course for the hall, feeling pretty bobbish, for at least a portion of my troubles would soon be over, if, of course, the safe was still open. It was, and I had reached it, and I was on the point of whipping out the jewel case and depositing it when a voice spoke behind me, and turning like a startled fawn, I perceived L.G. Trotter. Since my arrival at Brinkley Court, I had not fraternised to any great extent with this weasel-faced old buster. He gave me the impression, as he had done at that dinner of mine, of not being too frightfully keen on the society of his juniors. I was surprised that he should be wanting to chat with me now, and wished that he could have selected some more suitable moment. With that necklace on my person, solitude was what I had desired. Hey. Hi, he said. Where's your aunt? She's in her room, I replied, talking to our Mrs. Twatter. Oh, well, when you see her tell her I've gone to bed. This surprised me. To bed? Surely the night is yet young. I've got one of my dyspeptic attacks. You haven't a digestive pill on you? I'm sorry. I came out without any. Hell, he said, rubbing the abdomen. I'm in agony. I feel as if I'd swallowed a couple of wildcats. Hello, he proceeded, changing the subject. What's that safe door doing open? I threw out the suggestion that somebody must have opened it, and he nodded as if thinking well of this theory. Damned carelessness, he said. That's the way things get stolen. And before my bulging eyes, he stepped across the door and gave the door a shove. It closed with a clang. Oosh, he said, massaging the abdomen once more, and with a curt good night, passed up the stairs, leaving me frozen to the spot. Lot's wife couldn't have been stiffer. Any chance I had of putting things back in the safe had gone with the wind. Chapter 19. I don't know that I have a particularly vivid imagination, possibly not, perhaps. But in cirques like those which I have just outlined to you, you don't need a very vivid imagination to enable you to spot the shape of things to come. As plainly as if it had been the top line in an oculist's chart, I could see what the future held for Bertram. As I stood there gaping at that closed door, a vision rose before my eyes, featuring me in an inspector of police, the latter having in his supporting cast an unusually nasty-looking sergeant. "Are you coming quietly, Wooster?" the inspector was saying. "Who? Me?" I said, quaking in every limb. "I don't know what you mean." "Ha ha!" laughed the inspector. "That's good, eh, Fawenge?" "Very rich, sir," said the sergeant. "Makes me chuckle, that does." "Too late to try anything of that sort, my man," went on the inspector, becoming grave again. "The game's up. We have evidence to prove that you went to this safe and from it abstracted a valuable pearl necklace, the property of Mrs. L.G. Trotter. If that doesn't mean 5 years in the jug for you, I miss my bet." "But honestly, I thought it was Aunt Dahlia's." "Ha ha!" laughed the inspector. "Ha ha!" chirped in the sergeant. "A pretty story," said the inspector. "Tell that to the jury and see what they think of it. Firing aim! The handcuffs!" Such was the V that rose before my E as I gaped at that CD, and I wilted like a salted snail. Outside in the garden, birds were singing their even song, and it seemed to me that each individual bird was saying, "Well, boys, Wooster is for it. We shan't see much of Wooster for the next few years. Too bad, too bad. A nice chap till he took to crime." A hollow groan escaped my lips, but before another could follow it, I was waiting for Aunt Dahlia's room. As I reached it, Ma Trotter came out, gave me an austere look, and passed on her way, and I went on into the presence. I found the old relative sitting bolt upright in a chair, staring before her with unseeing eyes, and it was plain that once more something had happened to inject a black frost on her sunny mood. The Agatha Christie had fallen unheeded to the floor, displaced from her lap, no doubt, by a shudder of horror. Normally, I need scarcely say, my policy on finding this sterling old soul looking licked to a splinter would have been to slap her between the shoulder blades and urge her to keep her tail up. But my personal troubles left me with little leisure for bracing aunts. Whatever the disaster or cataclysm that had come upon her, I felt it could scarcely claim to rank in the same class as the one that had come upon me. "I say," I said, "the most frightful thing has happened." She nodded somberly. A martyr at the stake would have been cheerier. "You bet your heliotrope socks it has," she responded. "Ms. Trotter has thrown off the mask. Curse her! She wants Anatole." Who wouldn't? It seemed for a moment as if she were about to haul off and let her loved nephew have it on the side of the head, but with a strong effort she calmed herself. Well, when I say calmed herself, she didn't cease to boil briskly, but she confined her activities to the spoken word. "Don't you understand, ass? She has come out into the open and stated her terms. She says she won't let Trotter buy the boudoir unless I give her Anatole." It just shows how deeply my predicament had stirred me that my reaction to this frightful speech was practically nil. Informed at any other time that there was even a remote prospect of that superb disher-up handing in his portfolio and going off to waste his sweetness on the desert air of the Trotter home, I should unquestionably have blenched and gasped and tottered, but now, as I say, I heard those words virtually unmoved. "No, really," I said. "I say, listen, old flesh and blood, just as I got to the safe and was about to restore the Trotter pearls, that chump LG Trotter most officiously shut the door, foiling my aims and objects and leaving me in the dickens of a jam. I'm trembling like a leaf." "So am I don't know what to do." "I don't either." I search in vain for some way out of what the French call impasse. "Me too," she said, picking up the Agatha Christie and hurling it at a passing vase. When deeply stirred, she is always inclined to kick things and throw things. At Totley Towers, during one of our more agitated conferences, she had cleared the mantelpiece in my bedroom of its entire contents, including a terracotta elephant and a porcelain statue of the infant Samuel in prayer. "I don't suppose any woman ever had such a problem to decide. On the one hand, life without Anatole is a thing almost impossible. Here I am, stuck with this valuable pearl necklace, the property of Mrs. L.G. Trotter, and when it's lost, to contemplate, on the other hand, is discovered, hues and cries will be raised, inspectors and sergeants sent for. I must sell the boudoir, or I can't take that necklace of mine out of hock so, and I shall be found with what is known as hot ice on my person. Ice! And you know as well as I do what happens to people who are caught in possession of hot ice. Ice, she repeated and sighed dreamily. I think of those prawns in iced aspect of his, and I say to myself that I should be made to face a lifetime without Anatole's cooking. That sel d'oignon à la grecque, that mignonette de poulet rôti petit duck, those nonars de la Méditerranée au fenouil, and then I feel I must be practical. I've got to get that necklace back, and if the only way of getting it back is to sweet suffering soup spoons, she vociferated. If that's a word, anguish written on her every feature. I wonder what Tom will say when he hears Anatole is leaving. And I wonder what he'll say when he hears his nephew is doing a stretch in Dartmoor. Hey! Stretch in Dartmoor. Who's going to do a stretch in Dartmoor? I am. You! Me! Why? I gave her a look which I suppose, strictly speaking, no nephew should have given an aunt, but I was sorely exasperated. She came. Haven't you been listening? I demanded. She came back at me with equal heat. Of course I haven't been listening. Do you think that when I am faced with the prospect of losing the finest cook in the Midland counties, I have time to pay attention to your vapid conversation? What are you babbling about? I drew myself up. The word babbling had wounded me. I was merely mentioning that, owing to that ass L.G. Trotter having shut the door of the safe before I could deposit the fatal necklace, I am landed with the thing. I described it as hot ice. Oh, that's what you were saying about ice. That was what. I also hazarded the prediction that in about 2 shakes of a duck's tail, inspectors and sergeants would come scooping me up and taking me off to the chokey. What nonsense! Why should anyone think you had anything to do with it? I laughed, one of those short, bitter ones. You don't think it may arouse their suspicions when they find the waddy thing in my trouser pocket? At any moment I may be caught with the goods on me, and you don't have to read many thrillers to know what happens to unfortunate slobs who are caught with the goods on them. They get it in the neck." I could see she was profoundly moved. In my hours of ease, this aunt is sometimes uncertain, coy, and hard to please, and when I was younger, not infrequently sloshed me on the ear if my behaviour seemed to call for the gesture. But that will peril threaten Bertram, and she is there swinging every time. "This isn't so good," she said, picking up a small footstool and throwing it at a China shepherdess on the mantelpiece. I endorsed this view, expressing the opinion that it was dashed awful. "You'll have to hist, eh? Hist. What do you mean, hist?" What I had meant by that syllable was that I had heard footsteps approaching the door. Before I could explain this, the handle turned sharply and Uncle Tom came in. My ear told me at once that all was not well with this relative by marriage. When Uncle Tom has anything on his mind, he rattles his keys. He was jingling now like a xylophone. His face had the haggard, careworn look which it wears when he hears that weekend guests are expected. "It's a judgment," he said, bursting into speech with a whoosh. Aunt Dahlia mastered agitation with what I imagined she thought to be a genial smile. "Hello, Tom. Come and join the party. What's a judgment?" "This is on me, for weakly allowing you to invite those infernal trotters here. I knew something awful would happen. I felt it in my bones. You can't fill the house up with people like that without courting disaster. Stands to reason. He's got a face like a weasel, she's 20 pounds overweight, and that son of hers wears whiskers. It was madness to ever let them come across the threshold. Do you know what's happened?" "No, what?" "Somebody's pinched her necklace." "Good heavens!" "I thought that would make you sit up," said Uncle Tom with gloomy triumph. "She collared me in the hall just now and said she wanted the thing to wear at dinner tonight, and I took her to the safe and opened it, and it wasn't there." I told myself that I must keep very cool. "You mean," I said, "that it had gone?" He gave me a rather unpleasant look. "You've got a lightning brain," he said. "Well, I have, of course." "But how could it have gone?" I asked. "Was the safe open?" "No, shut. But I must have left it open. All that fuss of putting that frightful fellow Sidcup to bed distracted my attention." I think he was about to say that it just showed what happened when you let people like that into the house, but checked himself on remembering that he was the one who had invited him. "Well, there it is," he said. "Somebody seems to have come along while we were upstairs, seen the safe door open, and improved the shining hour. The trotter woman is raising Cain, and it was only my urgent entreaties that kept her from sending for the police there and then. I told her we could get much better results by making secret inquiries. Didn't want a scandal, I said. But I doubt if I could have persuaded her if it hadn't been that young Gorringe came along and backed me up. Quite an intelligent young fellow, that, though he does wear whiskers. Yeah." I cleared my throat nonchalantly. At least I tried to do it nonchalantly. "Then what steps are you taking, Uncle Tom?" "I'm going to excuse myself during dinner on the plea of a headache, which I've got, I don't mind telling you, and go and search the rooms. It's just possible I might dig up something. Meanwhile, I'm off to get a drink. The whole thing has upset me considerably. Will you drop me in a quick one, Bertie, my boy?" I think I'll stick on here, if you don't mind," I said. "Aunt Dahlia and I are talking of this and that." He produced a final obligato on the keys. "Well, suit yourself. It seems odd to me in my present frame of mind that anyone can refuse a drink. I wouldn't have thought it possible." As the door closed behind him, Aunt Dahlia expelled her breath like a death rattle. "Golly," she said. It seemed to me they're not just. "What should we do now, do you think?" I queried. "I know what I'd like to do. I'd like to put the whole thing up to Jeeves. If certain fatheads hadn't let him go off on toots in London just when we need him most. He may be back by now. Ring for Seppings and ask. I pressed the bell. Oh, Seppings, I said as he entered, and you rang, madam? Has Jeeves got back yet? Yes, sir. Then send him here with all speed, I said. And a few moments later, the man was with us, looking so brainy and intelligent that my heart leaped up as if I had beheld a rainbow in the sky. Oh, Jeeves, I yipped. Oh, Jeeves, yipped Aunt Dahlia, dead heating with me. After you, I said. No, go ahead, she replied courteously, yielding the floor. Your predicament is worth some my predicament. Mine can wait. I was touched. Very handsome of you, old egg, I said. Much appreciated. Jeeves, your close attention, if you please. Certain problems have arisen. Yes, sir. 2 in all. Yes, sir. Shall we call them Problem A and Problem B? Certainly, sir, if you wish. Then here is Problem A, the one affecting me. I ran through the scenario, putting the facts clearly and well. So, there you are, Jeeves. Bend the brain to it. If you wish to pace the corridor, by all means do so. It will not be necessary, sir. One sees what must be done. I said I would be glad if he could arrange it so that 2 could. You must restore the necklace to Mrs. Trotter, sir. Give it back to her, you mean? Precisely, sir. But Jeeves, I said, my voice shaking a little, isn't she going to wonder how I come to have my hooks on the thing? Will she not probe and question, and having probed and questioned, rush to the telephone and put in her order for inspectors and sergeants? A muscle at the side of his mouth twitched indulgently. The restoration would, of course, have to be accomplished with secrecy, sir. I would advocate placing the piece of jewellery in the lady's bedchamber at a moment when it was unoccupied, possibly while she was at the dinner table. But I should be at the dinner table too. I can't say, excuse me, and dash upstairs in the middle of the fish course. I was about to suggest that you allow me to attend to the matter, sir. My movements will be less circumscribed. You mean you'll handle the whole binge? If you will give me the piece of jewellery, sir, I shall be most happy to do so. I was overcome. I burned with remorse and shame. I saw how mistaken I had been in supposing that he had been talking through the back of his head. Golly, Jeeves, this is pretty feudal. Not at all, sir. You solved the whole thing, Wimp. What's that expression of yours? Rem acu tetigistis, sir. That's it. It does mean you put your finger on the nub, doesn't it? That would be a rough translation of the Latin, sir. I am happy to have given satisfaction. But did I understand you to say there was a further matter that was troubling you, sir? Problem B is mine, Jeeves, said Aunt Dahlia, who during the slice of dialogue had been waiting in the wings, chafing a bit at being withheld from taking the stage. It's about Anatole. Yes, madam. Mrs. Trotter wants him. Indeed, madam. And she says she won't let her Trotter buy the boudoir unless she gets him. And you know how vital it is that I sell the boudoir. Sweet spirits of nitre, cried the old relative passionately. If only there was some way of inserting a bit of backbone into L.G. Trotter and making him stand up to the woman and defy her. There is, madam. Aunt Dahlia leaped about 1.25 feet. It was as though that calm repose she had been a dagger of oriental design thrust into the fleshy part of her leg. What do you say, Jeeves? Did you say there was? Yes, madam. I think it will be a reasonably simple matter to induce Mr. Trotter to override the lady's wishes. I didn't want to cast a damper over the proceedings, but I had to put in a word here. Frightfully sorry to dash the cup of joy from your lips, old tortured spirit, I said, but I fear that all this comes under the head of wishful thinking. Pull yourself together, Jeeves. You speak... Is it airily?
Airily or glibly, sir.
Thank you, Jeeves. You speak airily or glibly of inducing LG Twotter to throw off the yoke and defy his considerably better half. But are you not too... Dash it all, I've forgotten words.
Sanguine, sir?
That's it! Sanguine! Brief though my acquaintance with these twain have been, I have got LD Twotter's number, all right. His attitude towards Ma Twotter is that of an exceptionally diffident worm towards a sinewy Plymouth Rock or Orpington. A word from her and he curls up into a ball. So where do you get off with that simple matter to override wishes stuff? I thought I had him there, but no.
If I might explain, I gather from Mr. Seppings, who has had opportunities of overhearing the lady's conversation, that Mrs. Trotter, being socially ambitious, is extremely anxious to see Mr. Trotter knighted, madam.
Aunt Dahlia nodded.
Yes, that's right. She's always talking about it. She thinks it will be one in the eye for Mrs. Alderman Blenkinsop.
Precisely, madam. I was rather surprised. Do they knight birds like him?
Oh, yes, sir. A gentleman of Mr. Trotter's prominence in the world of publishing is always in imminent danger of receiving the accolade.
Danger? Don't these bozos like being knighted?
Not when they are of Mr. Trotter's retiring disposition, sir. He would find it a very testing ordeal. It involves wearing satin knee breeches and walking backwards with a sword between the legs. Not at all the sort of thing a sensitive gentleman of regular habits would enjoy. And he shrinks, no doubt, from the prospect of being addressed for the remainder of his life as Sir Lemuel.
His name's not Lemuel.
I fear so, sir.
Could he use his second name?
His second name is Gedgolphus.
Golly, Jeeves, I said, thinking of old Uncle Tom Portarlington. There's some war work pulled at the font from time to time, is there not?
There is indeed, sir.
Aunt Dahlia seemed perplexed, like one who strives in vain to put her finger on the nub.
Is all this leading up to something, Jeeves? Yes, madam. I was about to hazard the suggestion that were Mr. Trotter to become aware that the alternative to buying me lady's boudoir was the discovery by Mrs. Trotter that he had been offered a knighthood and had declined it, you might find that gentleman more easily moulded than in the past, madam.
It took Aunt Dahlia right between the eyes like a sock full of wet sand. She tottered and grabbed for support at the upper part of my right arm, giving it the dickens of a pinch. The anguish caused her next remark to escape me, though as it was no doubt merely gosh or Lord love a duck or something of that sort, I suppose I didn't miss much. When the mists had cleared from my eyes and I was myself again, Jeeves was speaking.
It appears that Mrs. Trotter, some months ago, insisted on Mr. Trotter engaging the services of a gentleman's personal gentleman, a young fellow named Worple, and Worple contrived to secure the rough draft of Mr. Trotter's letter of refusal from the waste paper basket. He had recently become a member of the Junior Ganymede, and in accordance with Rule 11, he forwarded the document to the secretary for inclusion in the club archives. Through the courtesy of the secretary, I was enabled to peruse it after luncheon, and a photostatic copy is to be dispatched to me through the medium of the post. I think that if you were to mention this to Mr. Trotter, madam...
Aunt Dahlia uttered a whoop similar in timbre to those which she had been accustomed to admit in the old Corn and Pitchley days, when encouraging a bevy of hounds to get on the scent and give it both nostrils.
"We've got him cold!" So one is disposed to imagine, madam. "I'll tackle him right away!"
"You can't," I pointed out. "He's gone to bed. Touch of dyspepsia."
Then tomorrow directly after breakfast,
said Aunt Dahlia.
Oh, Jeeves!
Emotion overcame her, and she grabbed at my arm again. It was like being bitten by an alligator.